Okay, folks, welcome back to the show, and I'm joined by Kim Manning.
Hi.
And Lance Laswell. Now, Kim, you do some work with George Clinton from time to time. Tell me about that a little bit.
Well, 9, almost 10 years ago now, I left Tulsa, Oklahoma, and was a street performer. And through that, I met a girl that knew George Clinton, and got an interview or audition with him. And I played my senior recital from TU, which was an opera song of all things.
Really?
And he got about halfway through it and he stopped it and he goes, "Can you still sing like this?" And I was like, yeah, that was only a few months ago.
Right.
And from that moment on, I was in the band.
Okay. Now, you two have your own band as well.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're not chillaxing with the P-Funksters, you guys are doing your own thing. Where are you from?
I'm from Northern California.
Northern California?
Like Sacramento area.
Okay, cool. And what's the name of the band that you guys have? I know you have like different projects from time to time, and I know that changes. But what are you working with now?
That's a good question. We had a contest there for a moment, trying to come up with a name, and didn't see anything that fits. So for the moment, we've just been going by our last names, Laswell and Manning.
Laswell and Manning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And is it in the same vein as? Is it funky?
It is definitely funky.
Some of the stuff I heard on the internet was pretty.
Yeah, it's very
funky.
funk influenced. I think for me, 10 years in P-Funk, it's like it has to wear off on you a little bit, but we're definitely more rock edge, I think, than the rest of the funk.
I definitely have a rock and roll influence.
Yeah,
right.
he was more rock influenced. My influences when we met was sort of everywhere, because I have a degree in music theater, so it was like, it came from
TU, right?
Yeah, from TU, yeah. So I kind of would have like a reggae one song, and the next song was like a pop song, and but we've kind of got our thing to be more this like progressive rock with a funk edge,
Now, how long have you been a musician? I know you primarily do the guitar, but you were over here playing around the piano. How long have you been active, and what have you been up to?
I've been pretty much involved in music my whole life. My grandfather, from my mother's side, is a professional piano player, and then my father has been dabbling with music theater and performing at piano bars and stuff like that since I can remember. Like one of my first memories as a child is crawling underneath the piano bench and just kind of letting the vibrations of the piano hit me, and that was my favorite spot to be.
Right. Well, this show, is of course Retro Americana, in case you just tuned in, and we deal with a lot of old stuff, old crap. And music is old as anything, really.
Yeah, it comes back to stick and stone and rockin'.
So who are some of the older acts, and we'll start with you first, Lance, who are some of those older acts out there, 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe a little bit before that when you were a kid you listened to them, man, that's pretty good, I like that.
Well, of course, there's the Beatles. I'm sure everybody is.
Who was that?
Everyone in music is
English guys, right? Okay.
And I was really heavy into Led Zeppelin as well.
Right, can't go wrong there. Hey, we were talking earlier. That's my number one. That's my top of the charts right there.
And being a guitar player, I definitely did a lot of listening to Jimi Hendrix and trying to copy the things that he was doing.
Right. And then forge that into your own.
Yeah, definitely.
Ooze some use all over it.
My style is very, very eclectic. I listen to all across the board. I did study, a bit of classical in college and stuff like that, and jazz as well. And but I think that my roots have always kind of brought me to soul, which I think it goes within rock and roll as well. When I say rock and roll, it really to me is an amalgamation of so many different styles of music, and that's it's definitely a part of funk as well. Funk and rock and roll kind of go hand in hand, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, if you ask me, it all goes back to Robert Johnson.
Yeah.
That Mississippi Delta stuff. I mean, I'm sure there was other people maybe doing what he was doing, but he's the one that got his stuff recorded for everybody to hear, and then Elvis, and then it just branches out like a tree from there. You can pretty much connect almost anybody back to that if you did it.
I listened to a lot of George Clinton too back in the day.
Right.
I mean, I remember the first time I heard Cosmic Slop, for example. I mean, that to me, there's definitely funk elements, but that's like a rockin' tune.
Right.
The guitar solo is just blaring and raging, and I was definitely fell in love with that.
Right.
I think that influence showed off too, because in the shows that we've opened for the band, all the band members are like, oh, how's my favorite guitar player doing? You know, they all call him as their favorite.
In reference to this guy over here?
Exactly.
All right.
So I don't even know if you knew that, did you?
I've seen some of your stuff on the internet, but that doesn't mean anything until you see it somebody live. You know, there's a little bit more electricity or something. I don't know. So what about you? What are some of the you guys have seen this show, so kind of you know what I'm kind of going for. What is it for you? Name some old folks off that older acts that you went when you were a kid going, man, I like that a lot.
Well, I think for me, my very first, because I came from a classical background, I started training in opera and music theater, Cole Porter, you know, way back, right? But then the first like rock and roll band that I found that I really dug was, well, it's not even a rock and roll band, but Mamas and Papas.
Oh, well, no, that's, you know, they've got some little R&B in there in the background, and I don't know, it's...
harmonies, and, you know, so that was kind of, it's sort of funny that that's my biggest influence, and you ended up working with them, and then...
John Phillips, I worked with John Phillips.
Oh, really?
Before he died.
Oh, way cool. Okay.
And then I, you know, didn't hear any P-Funk growing up, and, you know, and then I ended up working with them, so...
That's kind of weird,
It's kind of funny how that worked out, but, you know...
And I wasn't really too familiar with the Mamas and the Papas before I started working with them.
Really? And you're from California, man.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, of course I heard California Dreaming, but other than that, you know, I wasn't real into, you know, they you know, they were more along the lines of kind of folk, like rock, and I wasn't so into folk when I was growing up. Now I've gotten a much more appreciation for it. When I was, you know, younger, you know, I was
Just pedal to the metal and let's melt everybody's face off as fast as we can.
I think that's still what
right?
you are.
So you guys are playing in here tonight out at Mona's Roadhouse, a great place to go, formerly Roxy's. It's an institution in this part of the area.
I think in the whole area, I mean, you know, Roxy's, well, at least for me, like, growing up, that was like the place, oh, go to Tahlequah and play there, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
That's like you've done something once you've been there. So.
Yeah. And I can remember, not being old enough to do much anything and finding a way to go out there and get into trouble, really. And you guys are opening for Mighty Kind.
That's right. Those
Now,
are my girls.
You go back with the Payne sisters a number of years, correct?
Yeah, since I was a young teenager. We used to go to the Bluegrass Festival in Winfield, Kansas. And I remember meeting them there, and they were all the rage, you know. They were a different configuration there. And so I remember meeting them, like, all like, oh, you guys are them, you know, like, and I remember Bonnie, like, taught me how to play the hand drums, and that was, like, my first hand drums.
She can look at a piece of wood and go, I can make something out of that. I can make an instrument, you know. You don't see a whole lot of people, at least around here, I don't know about the rest of the country, but you don't see a lot of people rocking a washboard.
Like she does.
Like, well, not only rocking one, but, yeah, and then actually playing one and doing what she does with it consistently, which is cool. And we, you know, James Townsend from Mighty Kind's a semi-regular guest on this show. You know, he brought the Atari stuff a few weeks ago, the Nintendo, and those weird little elf thingies that, James, those freak me out. I'm thinking about them now and I'm getting uncomfortable. I don't like that. That's weird. But yeah, but
He's
so,
a
you know,
creative, eclectic person, you know.
he is a very interesting guy.
I know
and
he played the saw one time with me, and I was like,
Did he?
yeah, that's awesome, you know.
Yeah, I went over to his house to get some overlay stuff for the first episode he was on. It was all this, it was celebrating the history of Nintendo and all this stuff. And I walked in and I was like, man, this is like a whole 2 seasons worth of this show of just getting stuff. I'm serious, the guy, I don't know if you've been over his house, but there's just stuff everywhere, musical instruments to all the Atari stuff and those weird little elf things. Yeah. So, folks, you know, this is the artifact part of the show. And normally, you know, we have something tangible like, you know, hey, this is, you know, it's something that you can hold. Not that this is an artifact, it's just an OU mug. But you get my point. So what we're going to do here is something very interesting and new for me. You have an artifact, but it's not something you can hold or touch. It's a song.
That's right. Well, you know, we decided that, you know, it's a living artifact, you know. It's like music carries on. So we wanted to, one of the songs that I sing with P-Funk and with our band is Red Hot Mama, which was written in the 70s and is definitely a P-Funk classic. And so we thought we'd bring that, you know. That's the beautiful thing about music, is that it continues to live on. And you know, funny enough, George, he always jokes around that he wrote that song for me, even though it was well before I was born.
Yeah, I'm going to say something. And George, if you're watching, I bet you've said that to a lot of ladies. You old dog, yeah. You old dog. I wouldn't put it past him.